Hey everyone, it's Eesha here. So it is time for an update. We're going to do a little bit of real talk today. So for those of you that have been following my journey for a little while, or if you're new to my page, big welcome to you. So I just want to share with you guys a little bit about what's actually happening, what I've been up to. I've had a lot of people inboxing, a lot of questions about what's going on. I did go into a little bit of radio silence for a couple of months where I was just too busy doing my own thing, didn't really have time for social media. And so this is the update on all things that have changed in the last couple of months. At the end of last year, I made the decision to close down my coaching business. It was something that I had been feeling coming for a few months, and I could sense that things are about to move in a bit of a different direction. So of course, I followed that inner guidance. And as a result of that, a number of opportunities just made themselves magically appear out of thin air towards the end of last year, which was really incredible. And so for this year, professionally, a lot of my work has focused around the UFO / now they call it UAPs because they've rebranded it to unidentified aerial phenomenon. So we call them UAPs now. So a lot of my work is in that UAP space, and I have had the most incredible few weeks just interviewing some of the world's experts in this field. So I kickstarted off the year having a chat with Harvard professor Avi Loeb. We talked about Oumuamua and really getting into some of the scientific elements of the existence of UAPs and intelligent life outside of this planet. Most of you guys who know my work, you know that I've sat in the spiritual and esoteric space for quite a while. And as we were getting to the end of last year, it became really clear that my work needed to pivot into a more scientific and academic space. Now, of course, to me, spirituality and science are just two sides of the same coin. It really just depends on what angle you're coming at it. And so I pivoted my angle from being full-blown esoteric into, right, I'm going to put on my academic hat. And many of you guys know that I do have a very academic background. I had my first academic paper published at the age of 21. I studied engineering back at the University of Western Australia. I've done all sorts of work in the academic space. I used to teach at university. So I do love the academic space. And then when I left all of that and I went into teaching meditation and multidimensionality, I really explored that quite deeply for quite a number of years. And then I felt like it was time to transition. Now, I know, of course, the two worlds are bridging together, the spiritual world or the esoteric world and the scientific world. They're ultimately all saying the same thing. What I have found to be so fascinating is that I've been talking to all these different experts. Like, for example, earlier today, I just got off a call with James Clarkson, who used to be the director of the MUFON, which is a mutual UFO network in the United States. And he served in that organization for 30 years. So he has personally listened to and received 2,000 cases of UFO experiences from civilians. And so, having these sorts of conversations with people, I've also had a chat with people like Alfred Lambremont Weber, just these are people who have published like 20, 30 books on the subject. I had a chat with Kevin Randall the other week as well. And like my mind is blown, I thought I was pretty darn open-minded. And then I started chatting with these people and asking them, so have you seen UFOs? Have you researched it? What do you know? Who have you spoken to? I think at this point, we really are, we're past the point of considering whether or not it does exist, but we're really in the realm of asking questions like, why has it been hidden? And which I don't really care about that much because I feel like I know why, but also looking at, most importantly, when the general public catches on that this is a thing, what is the impact of that going to be? So I'm now going into looking at, well, okay, let's assume that tomorrow 7.9 billion people get told that there is intelligent life out there in the universe, which you don't have to look very far to find out that that is true. So when we discover as a human race that this is actually true, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the medical industry? What does that mean for financial perspective? What our economy? Like, how is that going to impact all of these different things that hold our society together? And the one thing that keeps coming to me, and where I'm putting a bit of focus and research into at the moment, is what is it going to do to the human identity? Now, we have had like millennia of assuming, very naively, might I add, that we are the apex predator and that we are the most intelligent life in this planet and also this universe. Now, I know for a fact for that to be not true because, you know, a lot of my work in the last decade or so has come from ETs. I mean, I say that quite openly, like all of my healing modalities and things that I've learned and things I know about technologies, and it really has all come through my connection with these beings. But now taking that scientific and academic lens on it and actually talking to these people, a lot of the people that I'm chatting with don't actually understand the multidimensional aspect of it. In fact, when I've had some of these conversations with these experts in the space and I've told them, well, actually, guys, I figured out how to connect to any multidimensional channel in the universe and any being that's out there in the multiverse, they're looking at me like, can you teach us, you know? So I feel like at some point I may go back into the ufology community and be like, well, actually, guys, here's the missing piece, because that's the piece that I figured out like 10 years ago. So knowing what I know about multidimensionality and the pathway to help people get there, which to me is the stuff that I've been doing for years and years now. I've been able to create the system, replicate the system, test the system, teach the system to other people. I've trained facilitators who can now also do the same thing. So I know that the system of how to connect to these multidimensional beings is actually quite straightforward. But we still come up against, you know, the stigma around this idea that, well, it's all just woo-woo, it's not really provable. You know, it's interesting, some of these people that I've spoken with, when I mention the psychic and esoteric aspect of it, they want nothing to do with it. You know, some of these people in the ufology space are coming at it from a very hardcore scientific perspective. And unless there's physical proof that's measurable with instruments, they pretty much think that anything else that's more psychic or, you know, like through meditation or anything like that is basically considered just like non-evidence, it's anecdotal, can't really be used. And so I'm finding this process of research quite interesting in the different spectrum of where people sit. Some people that I've spoken to are a little bit more balanced. They're like, well, yes, I understand that, you know, the two worlds go together, that there's people with physical sightings and there's people who have been abducted, then there's people who claim to channel different beings. And so there really is quite a spectrum of people that I'm talking with, from psychics to ex-military to police to people who have been like organizing, you know, UFO sort of networks and then, you know, physicists. Like I've spoken to quite a wide range of people at this point, and the whole space is just so interesting. So I guess the biggest thing that you know, I've sort of landed on at the moment, and this is my inquiry moving forward, is what does it mean for us? Like, for example, I know for a fact that there are intelligent beings out there in the universe who have access to things like healing technologies and frequency technologies that can eradicate cancer. You know, now we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of, you know, big pharma and all of that, but some of you are probably well aware that, you know, a healed patient is not a profitable patient. So there are reasons why certain things haven't been released to the public. Now, on a slight side note, if you do go onto any of the websites relating to cancer, the cure for cancer is pretty much already there. It's called Have a Great Lifestyle. And then, you know, majority of cases, there are some cases that this will not apply to, but a lot of cases are just to do with epigenetics, poor diet, you know, sleep. Like, I mean, it's all there. You can read it yourself. You don't need me to tell you this. So anyway, we'll get off that tangent for a second. But when it comes to healing technologies, there are things that I've been shown from Star Family. And if we had access to these things, a lot of our disease on the planet would be eradicated. So, okay, first impact of cosmic disclosure is the entire pharmaceutical industry pivots completely and largely becomes redundant. So that's one thing. Now, how does it impact the economy? You know, like we live in an economy that's driven by supply and demand. And we have countries trading goods and resources with other countries. And then at a more micro level, you've got, you know, local shops, you've got like, there's a whole economy built around the things that we trade, like goods and services and supply and demand and resources and, you know, mining and all of those sorts of things. And then the ETs come in and they suddenly show us, which I know they're very capable of doing, that there are technologies that we, you know, as human beings haven't discovered yet. And so when we get shown these technologies, how does that change our economy? How does that change the things we invest in? How does that change the paradigm that currently, you know, houses our entire economic system? And it's a really big conversation, you know, because like I know for a fact that when you tap into some of these other dimensional frequencies, their economic systems are very different, you know, very, very different. And so there's a lot that we can learn from these other beings as well.
So it impacts, it impacts the economy. Then we look into, well, how does it impact law? Like when we suddenly accept the reality that there are beings outside of this planet who we can communicate with, well, what is the pathway to communicate with them? Is there a governance system? Do they have a governance system? Is our governance system optimal, and can it even account for the existence of these beings? I think we have a lot of work to do, to be quite honest with you. We're going into, if you look at the concept of international relations, and then you extrapolate that into intergalactic relations, that's a whole field that still needs to be developed. Are there systems? Are there protocols? Are there cultural differences between us and these other dimensional beings that we need to be aware of? And the answer is yes. So again, there's another field of research that goes into looking at like what all these things are. Now, when I spoke with Alfred Weber, he has written a book. His whole field of interest is around exopolitics. So he's a lawyer by trade, and he's actually quite established too. So Alfred Weber, for those of you who don't know him, he was on the panel. He was a judge at the time that President George Bush was being tried for crimes against humanity. I don't remember the exact sentence, but it was during the Iraq War. So there was a tribunal held in Malaysia, and so Alfred Weber was actually a judge on that panel. And so this is someone who's quite well respected, who's gone and written a book on exopolitics discussing this exact topic. What does it look like? How does it affect our political systems? So if you really start to look at, firstly, the question of why has humanity not been told? Well, one is because look how many impacts it's going to have. If any of the governments came out tomorrow, like the Australian government, the US government, if any authority came out and said, well, actually, yes, these beings exist and we've been in connection with them for hundreds of years, which by the way is very true, then what happens is it starts to impact on the way that we perceive ourselves as a human race. So that's a human identity. It impacts upon multiple industries, all of our industries, actually. It gives us perspective in terms of who we are in relation to everything else in the universe. And then as we start opening and expanding that consciousness and awareness, well, it's like when you realize there's entire species out there that you just weren't aware of, and suddenly these things now exist and they're in your awareness and they're tangible and you can communicate with them, you can learn things from them. There's a lot that we can actually receive. We are not the most intelligent race in this multiverse. We are far from it. A lot of these other, high dimensional beings, we're like the children of the universe, the human race really hasn't got their shit together. It's not hard to see that. We're still at war internally within ourselves, within like different countries, and we can't even get our own planet together, let alone connecting with other planets. So there's that. There's the way that we're treating our planet, which, by the way, if you think about how much we've destroyed our planet in the last couple of 100 years, that doesn't speak to an evolved civilization. There's a lot of work that we have to do. We have a lot of disease rampant on our planet. That, again, doesn't speak to an evolved civilization, and then we can talk about things like, well, where does artificial intelligence sit in all of this? So, and this is a big topic in and of itself. Artificial intelligence is actually an inorganic pathway of evolution. And there, when people talk about spirituality and ascension and new earth and things like that, we're leading people into an organic evolution, not an inorganic evolution. And so the whole movement of transhumanism, like, yes, I totally can understand that there's value in some of that research. Like, for example, if you're able to medically help someone through the use of AI or certain technologies, then there is benefit to that. But where do you draw the line? Where are we trying to play God when we shouldn't be? And so again, there's ethical questions, there's moral questions. There are people already out there that are saying, they're talking about AI rights, because as soon as you ask an artificial intelligence, are you real? And it responds with yes, well, suddenly there's a criteria for sentience in that. It's inorganic sentience, but sentience and sentience. And so you look at inorganic versus organic sentience, and then you look at what these other dimensional beings are doing. And I have seen in certain timelines beings who have taken planets into inorganic evolutions, and what's happened is like all the organic life on that planet has essentially died out. It's quite a sad reality. I have, through my meditations, I've seen some of this stuff, And so again, there's a lot of questions to ask. And so for the last few months, this is what I've been doing. I've been contemplating all of these different areas and going, okay, cool. We're past the point of do ETs exist? They obviously do exist. There's enough evidence out there. And as I start publishing, you know, all of my research and things that I'm doing, there's no shortage of evidence that this is actually happening. I mean, there are plenty of people stepping forward now, in not even just whistleblowers, but also like people like ex-military, defense, police, Air Force, who are talking about these things. And one of the big reasons for that happening at this time is in December last year, President Biden actually called them forward. So there is now an amnesty for these people, where previously, you know, that you had fear of retribution for coming out and speaking about these things. President Biden is now openly asking for it. There's congressional hearings. There was a conference that happened last year. There was an official paper that was released. Mind you, the paper was a bit of hogwash. Like it kind of said a lot without saying a lot. It was like those one of those real like traditional political type documents where they say a lot without really saying anything. So not a whole lot was really released in that at the moment, but it's a step forward. You know, I think that's really important as well. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm having chats with all of these people who are key players in the space and going, okay, cool. What does that mean? How do we bring this forward? But also looking at, and this has been my personal inquiry, why has it not already happened? And what is that hesitation? Because I know from what I've spoken to with these beings who I communicate with all the time, there is a push for disclosure to happen from the higher realms. And the reason for that is that, you know, it's to do with not annihilating the planet. It's to do with diverting the potential of another world war, which we really can't have. The last thing we need is a situation where the planet does self-destruct. And we, like from a climate perspective and from an environmental perspective, the planet is probably in a lot worse state than what the media will tell you. Again, enough research to back what I'm saying. If you go down into those rabbit holes far enough, you will see that I mean, if we keep going the way that we're going, there's not a lot of life left on this planet. Like it's actually quite dire. So, you know, as much as I'm not like saying, well, the aliens are going to come and rescue us, what is happening is that there are beings out there that want to assist us, who have evolved beyond the state that we are evolving to. And we very, very much are like children in this universe. You know, I mean, the human race is really not that evolved. And so it's quite humbling when you look at it that way and go, okay, well, maybe we can learn from some of these beings. And if people get out of that fear mentality and that mentality of, oh, I need to keep all the secrets to myself, because a big reason for the cover-ups is they want to, when I say they, I mean certain people inside certain governmental and private organizations, they want to keep the secrets of the technologies and certain things for themselves instead of opening up to everyone else. But the beings themselves do actually want to open a lot of this stuff up, because there are things like, you know, free energy, and there's so much available out there that these beings have access to that we can then access as well. And so what I'm doing at the moment is kind of bridging those worlds of the scientific and academic realms, and also all the esoteric stuff that I've known for years, bringing those worlds together and going, okay, cool. Let's just move past the point of questioning whether or not they exist, but now looking at opening a conversation to how do we actually facilitate that disclosure without necessarily relying on any governmental organizations. Because I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to be the ones to come out anytime soon and say it. There's some movement happening, but I really think it's up to us to do it. I think these days people are a lot smarter. We're not just believing everything the media tells us. It really is up to us to do our due diligence, to do the research, and to, you know, just be a little bit open-minded in this as well. So I'm not holding out for the government, any of the governments or any governmental organizations to be disclosing anytime soon. So I'm not waiting for it. I'm just going to go ahead and do the bit that I feel guided to do to bring this information out to the public. Now, I'm certainly not the first one doing this. There's already a lot out there, which I acknowledge. The biggest difference now, though, is that because there is that level of amnesty, particularly in the United States, more and more people are going to start coming forward. So I'm really excited to have these conversations with people and to start really getting this ball moving, because when there's enough evidence out there, then, you know, if some organization comes out and says, oh, but it was just like a weather balloon, well, people aren't dumb, you know, like we kind of know what's going on a little bit more. And so it's really just about releasing that information to the public, making sure that people can make their own informed decisions, and providing some clear pathways and suggestions and guidance for how to actually facilitate that disclosure in such a way that the population doesn't go into a mass crisis, or, the last thing we want is an intergalactic war. Like, I think that's really important to state. And when a mass population goes into fear, there's a vibrational impact of that as well. So the way that this disclosure happens does have to be done in a very loving way, a gentle way. And also, we have to put a few things, like a few foundations in place in order for that disclosure to actually be well received by the public as well. So those are some of the conversations I'm having. Those are some of the things I'm creating. There's documentation behind the scenes for the first time in my life, I'm going into like policy, looking at like policy, international relations, like all of these different areas that are completely new for me, but also calling upon experts in that space as well. Like, there are people who've already kind of done the hard yards and who've done the foundational work in this space. So now it's just about coming together, bringing the right groups of people together to have these conversations, open these discussions and go, okay, cool. How are we going to do this? And how can we take this into our own hands as well? Because I certainly don't want to put it into the hands of someone else. I think the time is now. And if anyone's going to do it, we're going to do it, right? So I've always said for years that we are the disclosure. So for anyone who's sitting out there, still hoping and wishing that, someone else somewhere is going to make an official statement, I don't see that happening anytime soon, I'm sorry to say, but that doesn't stop us from doing the work. And the work, the work is practically, like, in terms of making sure that we're doing the research, but also, I mean, like, I personally have been in contact with these beings for a decade. So if I can do it, you can do it too. One of the things that I've done is I've released all of my content on YouTube. So if you do want to have your own disclosure for yourself, which you can do at any time and nothing is stopping you from doing that, just head on over to my YouTube channel, watch the videos, open your chakras, access your multidimensional selves, and that is your disclosure. You don't need some official authority to come out and say anything, because at the end of the day, if you see the starships and you have these light beings walking into your home, well, they're real, and I've been having this for years and years and years. So I guess that's a big part of the conversation as well. It's like, let's release this idea that we need someone else, who's like an authority figure or something to come in and tell us, that this is real. If you've had an experience, if you know someone who's had an experience, or if you do the work and you open up your energy channels and you learn how to do it yourself, well, no authority can refute that, So this is where we do take things on a more personal level as well. And we go, well, okay, I can do this. The tools are all out there. I mean, I myself am releasing all of my content. So go nuts, do the work, watch the videos, do the weekly activations, and you can access your multidimensional self. Anyone can do it, right? So that's what I'm working on. I just wanted to jump in and give a little life update, because it has been a while since I've properly communicated on social media. And yeah, if you guys want access to any of my materials, just jump on over to my Facebook group, jump on over to my YouTube channel. There's a lot available for you guys to get on with. I personally am not around to, like, I won't be answering questions or anything like that. Like, I'm done as a mentor, as a spiritual mentor. I feel like I'm really quite complete in that chapter of my life, but it's there for you to do independently. So while I won't be around to run groups or anything like that, for those of you who are committed and dedicated, I mean, it's very self-explanatory. You just watch the videos, have your experiences, so it's all kind of there, So yeah, thanks for joining me with this little update today. Definitely go hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, because as I do more of this research and there's more and more of these conversations, I will be posting those things up on YouTube as well. And then on other platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc. It'll be everywhere. But just, yeah, get prepared for that. Big things are coming. It's going to be a really freaking big year. And the disclosure is you. I mean, you get to do it now. You don't have to wait. It's right here. It's right now. That's my big message to you all. And it's going to be a game changer. So yeah, it's very exciting, guys. All right. Have an amazing day. And yeah, sending you guys lots of love. Bye.